All right, here I am with my new friend, Greg Hohman, and he's going to be telling me a little bit about kind of his background, and we're going to discuss some trading here if you're just joining us. So that's what we're about to enter into. So Greg, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and kind of where you're at and what your goals are?
Hey, Dale. Thank you. I sure appreciate you taking me on for time to chat because I value your options experience. And I can see from investigating you on YouTube that I see other areas of your life that it's like, whoa, wait a minute here. There's like proof that he's real. And, I mean, not many people you see trading live multiple. I've never seen it actually. Live, multiple accounts, small, medium, large, and giving a video at the same time with somebody.
Yeah.
Nobody does that.
Right.
So for me, that was like, whoa, something's going on here. And you're not just trading, you're doing something that requires extreme precision. One mistake could wipe out an account.
Right.
And you're doing that on a live account. That's mind blowing to me.
Gotcha.
So that means some serious diligence because you're doing it for trusted friends, for family. It's like, I've managed a lot of properties, real estate, but that's nothing compared to managing real-time, large sums of money.
Right.
that could in an instant vanish if you screw up. So that's pretty impressive. And to get to that point is where, honestly, I want to be. Okay. I've had a little rocky road. We all go through rocky roads.
Sure.
Mine is in part my own making, but started out a long time ago. I'm 65 now.
Okay.
I started out as a CPA, graduate of college and that whole thing. And, you end up doing 25 different things than what you graduated in.
Right.
But I quickly realized as a CPA that wasn't for me. So I went into management consulting and kind of like that. Very interesting area for probably 8 years.
Okay.
Doing consulting in a variety of ways to help companies improve.
Okay.
And it got me highly interested in not only owning a company, having my own business, but also it got me into real estate. I love that a lot. And so took off from consulting and went into real estate for 25 years. Was a commercial real estate broker, manager, owner, leasing, sales, all that. Had my own company. I had worked for a guy that owned a very large portfolio, managing his portfolio, 50 million, something like that. And it was spread around the US in real estate and also, stocks, bonds, cash, that kind of thing. And so I garnered a pretty good reputation for being honest with and diligent with managing money.
Right.
And so that was good preparation. And I watched the 87 crash for this guy and all that and helped him through, those kind of things.
Yeah.
Anyways, went out on my own finally, which was a real nail biter because I had 3 young children and it's a big deal to go out on your own.
What year was that?
That's got to be 87, I'm guessing.
Okay.
Yeah. And started my own company in management and then built from the management into development. And pretty soon I was a
real estate management.
Yes.
Okay.
And pretty soon I was doing developing large commercial centers, office, retail, trying to get into residential large development, that kind of thing.
Gotcha.
And it was good, real good. I had a partner that started with me, and we just on a friendship, we did a $10 million deal and signed the deal after a couple of years. So that was amazing to be able to work off of a relationship.
Right.
So enjoyed that. Then we decided to sell out of the management business, and thank God it worked out great. And we moved our entire operation from California to Alabama.
Okay.
That's where grandparents were.
Okay.
And we got out of the management business, and I said, what am I going to do next? And I was doing
what year was that?
That's a hard one. I'd have to ask my wife to help me piece it together, to be honest.
I got you.
I should have that down, but you get old. Anyways, so anyways, we're in Alabama. So what are we going to do next? And I had garnered a portfolio in value of, I'd say, a little over $1 million. I felt pretty good about myself because I'd
Sure.
done well.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'm going to go. I heard this seminar, and I thought, this looks great. It was like how to manage your own investments instead of Merrill Lynch or you name it,
Right.
And I said, I'm going to do that. And so I figured I could do way better than that, right?
Right.
And bought a program, very expensive program. I feel like a fool. I believe the guy on the stage. He was like up there giving his stuff. I do this. And later on, I find out 2 years later, he got prosecuted and for a lot of money because he was lying. He's lying through his teeth. And,
This makes you ill to think of,
well,
the people that are getting taken advantage of. And I've sat through some of those programs and they're just hawking things and trying to get people to put large sums on their credit cards. And I look around and I think, none of these jokers can afford, what it is that they're proposing. And it just, I've left in the middle of, one of my buddies invited me to one of those and I didn't even finish it. And I just I don't feel ethically, it's just so distasteful for me to
good for you
through this. And my buddy said, I'm coming back. And he was even thinking about plunking down a credit card. And I was just thinking, I don't think what they're doing is ethical at all. And I just didn't feel good.
Did you save your buddy from that?
I talked to him about it later. But we are recordings, but he just seems a little more susceptible sometimes. There's been a few times in his life where I've been the guy going, hey, I think this is a scam. And he's thought, no, I don't think so. And I was like, and I pushed enough to where I didn't want to irritate him. But, I just feel like over the years, I can smell a scam better than I could in my 20s and 30s.
Yes. I was just at the point where I was fat and happy after selling my company.
Yeah.
And thinking, I believe this. In fact, well, I shouldn't say it, but Rudy Giuliani was on the stage and he gave an endorsement, and it's like, this looks great, man. I'm going to dive in.
And I trust Rudy, right?
Yeah, I hadn't been a trader, and so I didn't know that that pit, like any other pit, is full of snakes.
Yeah.
And anyways, I went through it. Of course, I got the training and then kind of bought into it. And then I realized, well, heck, 95% of these traders are rocking out of this thing in no time. And so I spent that time digging into trading, studying like crazy, full time. Then do
you recall what year that was?
No, I'm going to have to get back to you on that. I'd sound like an idiot if I'd say it was, let's see, it's got to be 2007, I'd say.
Okay, 13 years ago. Okay.
Yeah. And so we're digging into trading and finding out all the rocks. And I don't know, can you press the pause on the
sure
on the thing real quick?
Yeah.
I'm good with that. Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So anyways, I'm now in a recovered state, and I feel great. I'm back into, I'm a runner. That's my passion.
Awesome.
I especially like to run in the forest, and just got back from a run just now.
Okay.
I really get a kick out of it. And, and it gives me life. So building up my physical side so that I feel good about mentally as well, because it spins right off to your mental state.
Sure.
And am into a pretty good routine now, trading wise.
Okay.
I have traded since 2008. I guess I was spoiled in the sense that when you come on and during a crash, and that's your first exposure to trading, you can imagine when you're watching it on the screen. I was on Thinkorswim at the time. Right. And the guy's calling what's going on, and I have it's imprinted in my head how the sky is falling, man, and everybody's jumping out windows because it was the worst.
Right.
And so at the same time, my real estate portfolio was cratering.
Okay.
the bank is calling up,
Hmm.
send some money in, will you? How about 500,000 to protect your
Yeah,
stake in this property?
just a little pocket change there.
Yeah, so it was a crisis that cratered on itself, and then my continuing being stuck at the time where I wasn't able to rescue myself,
Mm,
and I had gone from trading stocks, a few options, and then saying, "Hey, futures is where it is for me. Futures is it."
mm,
And so I traded ES, I traded YM, I traded oil, and I got hooked on oil.
right.
Um, and I got pretty good at it, but I was trading it live, and I was breaking even, and that
Yeah,
wasn't good enough. And given where I was at the time, breaking even, it just wasn't cutting the mustard, because I'm not bringing any money in,
sure.
and you can only live off your future without doing this full time. It's like, when do I quit here? And I'm like, and then we're going into the Obama years, and I'm like, I'm not getting ahead anymore, and I'm just not
Okay.
making it. And I'm watching my portfolio down, 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 and it's mentally debilitating. So I figured I can't not trade futures where it's discretionary. You're not dealing with a fixed rule. You're dealing with a discretionary trade that you have to exercise extreme discretion on.
Mm,
And over trading and kill a lot of people. That was part of my problem. But regardless, I had to put it on hold. It was crushing for me. At the time, my son-in-law, who was a chef, said, "Hey, Greg, let's do a restaurant."
okay. You
And
have been
being
involved in a lot of things.
well, being in real estate, I'm like, that's the last thing I ever want to do, especially real estate management, because you see how many restaurants go down. But
Sure.
at the time, I literally felt trapped. Like I needed to do something because I got to get back in the game. I'm getting older. You can't really
Yeah.
go out and get a job unless you're going to work at Home Depot. And what do you?
What year was this, you think?
That
2010?
was about 10 years ago. Yeah, so it's I guess
2010.
yeah, somewhere right
Okay.
in there.
All right.
I got to do something. And so we moved from Alabama to Atlanta,
Okay.
and opened up a restaurant with a theme called SoCal Mex, because we're all from
And
California.
you sent me some of the stuff you were doing around the drive-in,
Yes.
right?
So,
You know,
yeah,
when it was called Mavericks, I was thinking Dallas Mavericks, right? So that's kind of why I clicked
yeah.
on it when you said, "Hey, you ought to join us." And then I thought, okay, this is not local.
So someday, if you visit Atlanta, we've been
Yeah.
in business now for 6 years, and been the number one restaurant in our area for at least 4 years.
And that's you and your brother. Is your brother-in-law involved in that one?
No, he and I kind of went apart. He
Okay.
now has a fine dining restaurant in the city where I live called Flowery Branch,
Okay.
and it's an incredible experience. Fine dining is a whole different type of deal,
Sure.
and so he's gotten really rave reviews there. He's a top chef, really. He's amazing,
Okay.
and he got us started at Mavericks, and since then we've taken it a few different directions. And it's a good restaurant, but
Yeah.
now you tell me what restaurants are worth during
Yeah.
COVID. You
Right.
know, it's like they're worthless.
Right.
Nobody wants a restaurant, and we're barely eking through this crisis, because when you used to have 100%, and now you have, if you're lucky, 50% of the people coming through, it's not an easy situation. So
Sure.
um, we're again cash pinched.
Okay.
Um, my daughters run the joint now, and I had about a year ago a heart operation. They installed a ICD where it defibrillates you, and pacemaker kind of thing. And so that was a
Okay.
kind of a shocking event for me,
Yeah.
and set me back a little. I said from that point I wasn't going to really work at the restaurant because it's just too much stress.
Gotcha. Yeah.
When I get major stress, something electrical malfunctions on my heart, and
Okay.
so now I'm trading, been at the screens and kind of pulling away from the restaurant. I went into futures again. And then with this COVID, it's like, hey, how can you trade when you know your income's going down? And it's like, well, every loss that you incur, it makes you freak out.
Okay.
And so you cannot trade futures discretionary, at least in my mind, with a level head when you know your income's drying up. It's not a
Sure.
good, it's not a good feeling when you risk something and you lose 300, 500, you can't deal with it.
Yeah.
And so that caused me about 2 months ago to say, hey, I got to change something. I've got to get something regular. And for me, when I looked at options again and I started studying credit spreads, I'm saying, wait a minute here, low capital, that works. I can
Hmm.
dive into credit spreads. I can get a great win rate, which is very important for your psyche,
Hmm.
a good win rate. And if I can prove my expectation on the trade over time is going to make it, then I want to dive into credit spreads and do it. And then as I dug it deeper, I found Tammy,
Okay.
and then I found you,
Gotcha.
and I found zero DTE credit spreads, and I'm like, I'm here.
Yeah, you found
And
your spot. Well,
so
let me.
since I've been
So
doing some paper, and that's about it. So
gotcha. So that kind of takes you up to the present day. Is that a correct statement? So
yes,
let me
sir.
kind of give you, I guess, a little rundown of me. I started out, I taught introduction to speech communication at Oklahoma State, working on my master's, and not sure as a young kid what I wanted to do, but I came to the point where I wanted to do corporate training. And so I had 3 years in the defense business at a company called LTV Missiles and Electronics Group.
Wow.
They make
Yeah.
the multiple launch rocket system, and I was organizing kind of like a little small college inside that company where we taught all kinds of things to employees. And we had an education with industry and training with industry for Army and Air Force officers that would come in and work on developing to be a contract manager, kind of a liaison between customer and the military contractor. And then in 1990, I went to work in the oil and gas business. Arco Oil and Gas Company that was Atlantic Richfield, and throughout California they had all the AM PM mini marts, and I was doing management development. So I went from a company that was in chapter 11 bankruptcy because of trying to throw their steel pension obligation to the government, and they kept kicking it back to them. And then now all of a sudden I was in a company that actually had some money, and I'd look at this corporate training environment, where I was used to having to move overhead projectors in between classrooms because I'd get kicked out in the middle of it. And they had a whole room, of all this rooms and people coming in and teaching stuff. And it's just like a kid in a candy store. And
Wow.
so
Wow.
that was 1990 through 1993. And then all of the change from oil and gas kind of going down, and employees were kind of joking about what year are you going to graduate. And so at about 1993, I decided I wanted to go out on my own. And I've been a freelancer entrepreneur since 1993, and did corporate training and development mainly for corporations that were large enough to bring me in to teach either management development or employee development.
Mhm.
So meanwhile, kind of let me go back to 1988. I bought my first mutual fund, and I had to drive to the library to research it. I experienced 1987, the first crash, and it felt like it was a big deal to me, even though I only lost a few $100 because that's all I had.
Uh-huh.
Right. And
Uh-huh.
so in 1988, and then, I was a buy and hold guy, follower of Warren Buffett, just buy and hold forever. And that worked for me through about 2008. And I was playing poker in Atlantic City, and I was looking up at CNBC and just kind of watching the stock market crash.
Oh
And
yeah.
a friend of mine that worked for a hedge fund, he said, "What are you doing to hedge?" And I said, "What's a hedge?" Right. And so I think somewhere around after that, recovered a little bit. I started selling covered calls, was the first thing I started on, and started maybe 2010 selling covered calls. And 2012, I wrote a blog post called Double Your Money Every 2 to 3 years selling Apple options, and I ran some math on it. And I sold covered calls on Apple for enough years. At one time, I calculated my cost basis on Apple.
Yeah.
Guess what it was?
I heard already.
Minus $40,
Yeah.
right? So, and so I went from covered calls, and that was 2010 was kind of my deal, 2012. And then from there, somewhere 2013, 2014, 15-ish, I met Tasty Trade online, which has been a very valuable asset to me in terms of learning. So then I started opening up my game. I started selling naked puts on stocks that I would like to own. I started selling naked strangles as a neutral strategy. I learned about beta weighted deltas, and I started kind of measuring the risk level of that. I started having friends and family kind of look at me like the financial manager within this larger of group of friends and family. So here we are today, years later, and I've got 15-ish portfolios that I'm managing of friends, family. A few of them are my 93-year-old mother's who's in assisted living, so I feel a very vested interest and a purposeful drive to be successful because it pays for her, assisted living, $5,000 a month. So that's kind of where I'm at, and what we've done with Trade Diff. Let me kind of give you the background of Trade Diff. My partner in that, Mike Carmendro, I found him online in a YouTube video, and I sought him out because I really liked the way he thinks. And he was at the time running a startup technology company that was doing a lot of paper trading. And so I joined in with him on that deal. And what we discovered in that was that online real-time data is expensive. And if you're not paying for it, it can be highly unreliable. So we were trying to find a way to do what we wanted to do without having to pay for all the real-time data. So we pivoted. We figured out a way to link with Ameritrade's API. If a person has an account with Ameritrade, you can use their real-time data and connect with their API. And you don't even have to fund an account, just start an account, and then we can link with it. And so that's what we're doing now, is we're allowing people to paper trade, accessing the real-time data from TD Ameritrade. Now it's new enough that there's a few things like their disclaimer sounds like you're giving away your firstborn, and it scares people to death because it's not really accurate, and they're merging with Schwab, and I'm sure Mike and I at Trade Diff aren't their highest priority, and we've tried to get them to write it a little more accurately so it's not quite as scary, but we're working on that. So that's kind of, and so for the last couple years, we've been, Trade Diff does, I think, two things. It allows people to kind of measure what winning looks like. So it establishes some really good metrics of how you're doing. And what I find, whether it's any game, there's a story I heard about. There was a football game in Louisiana, and Hurricane Katrina blew in, and they lost the goalpost and the scoreboard. And people showed up to this high school football game, and it was like nobody was paying attention. And so one of the key things is you've got to have some metrics to know how you're doing on a day-to-day basis. And so that's kind of what Mike and I have tried to create, is better ways to understand risk, better ways to measure kind of how you're doing, and to create a collaborative environment where you can learn from what other people are doing, kind of figuratively look over somebody's shoulder without actually having to be there. I was influenced when I first learned how to play online poker. You'd have these really good tournament players that would play online, and they would explain they'd record it and they'd explain all their thought processes. So I thought, wouldn't that be great if you had some of the best traders in the world that you could have access to, and they could explain their mental models and their reasoning and why they're doing what they're doing, so that I think it would dramatically increase. They've said it takes about 10,000 hours of deep and deliberate practice to become world class at anything. But if you could have the right processes, instead of 10,000 hours, might take, 100, or anyway, if you can speed it up, we can make it faster. So that's kind of what we've created in TradeDiff. And Mike and I have said the worst thing that could happen is we've just built a toy that you and I are going to use for our benefit till we croak, because I'm going to be trading for the rest of my life. The best thing is we find a few people like ourselves who are as fanatical about it, and we can eventually build some kind of a reasonable subscription-based model where people are learning together.
Well, who wrote TradeDiff?
My partner, Mike. He's a former employee at a contractor at Google. Mm-hmm. And he and I've been involved in kind of new product development efforts. At one time, I had 5 apps out on the iPad and iPhone. Wow. I used to be a adjunct faculty at the SMU Guildhall School of Video Game Production. But I don't know anything about building video games, but I know how to get work done in and through other people. And so what I was working with was project managers who were managing coders as well as artists and graphic artists to put together a video game. And I've facilitated new product development efforts in the research and development space. And so he and I have he's the coder and he's also a trader, and I'm a trader, and I'm kind of a people connector. And so kind of together we're kind of creating it as we go. And
as I signed on to that the other night, for me, it was like walking into a cave and going, wow, because I have done similar in futures on a Jigsaw's product called Journalytics. I don't know if you've heard about it.
I haven't.
I want you to look at it, and just for ideas for your own benefit.
Let me make a note of that. Journalytics.
Yes. And it's a journal and analytics all in one, similar over-the-shoulder kind of thing.
Okay.
And you may find some things in there that would be valuable for option as well. And I just was blown away by your program. Wow.
Well, whenever I meet somebody who's as excited about it as we are, I want to talk to you, because sometimes you're talking to people about it and they think you're trying to sell them something because they've had scar tissue on their rear end from like your prior experience. And so everybody's kind of checking their wallet. And I don't want to be that guy, so
I can tell you from one instant, it's 2:30 in the morning. You're a little tired, and I'm there into that thing, checking out TradeDiff, and I'm going to fill it out. It's so awesome. So I'm going through it, filling out all the forms, and I didn't get into it completely, but it was like, this is mind blowing.
Well, I am going to tell you first, Greg, is the thing you wrote was so positive. At first I was like, can this be for real? Or is he some kind of a bot or something? But then when I saw your reference to TradeDiff, it was just, if this is a bot, it's a really good one, because you were...
The reality is that I now see with this call right here, your experience over the years, especially in corporate training, because I was in corporate systems as well and training, and you had oodles more of it, and then it expanded bigger. And so now I see it's all coming together, how you have this group and your skill set. And you're not doing the simple teacher stuff. You're connecting on a more of a how would I say it? More of a uplifting, not a teacher, but an uplifting and promoting their learning at the pace they want, which is weird to me, but it works.
Yeah.
If you can motivate them and they're moving at the speed they want, that's incredible teaching. So
what I've tried to do with this group is, I was spending a lot of time thinking about what would I want somebody to do for me? And it's not spoon feeding them and charging them some kind of hourly fee that you're not scared to death, like what you're going to get the bill. But what I wanted to do was create a development plan for learning how to trade options. And kind of here's the premise that I'm going off of is CEOs across the United States were asked the question, what contributes most to the development of your future leaders? What came up number one was having a personal, individualized development plan that's tailored to you.
Mm-hmm.
And what contributed most to the quality of that plan was sharing it with at least one other person besides yourself. And so when I kind of coach people on the corporate, we'll look at kind of their desired outcomes of where they're headed career-wise and what might be standing in the way. And then we begin to kind of co-create a development plan. So what I would just sat back and I thought, what would a development plan look like for an options trader? And so I thought sequentially, it's first to decide, is this for me? Do I enjoy the activity? What are the pros and cons? And then I began, so that's kind of why you might have seen the video where I was talking, a small group through, and a couple of them have reached out to me for coaching. And then there's a few of just other poker buddies that seem to have a lot of interest that had been in part of our contest. And I just said, hey, join this group if you'd like to. So what we've first done is we've created a Slack group, and I have an online holding spot for all my documents on there so that they can go to. And then I've built a development plan. And if you saw the video, I was asking them kind of, how fast do you guys want to move? And there was about 3 out of the 4 of them that said, I'd like to move pretty fast. People say that, but then they also, you got to watch their behavior. I mean, you may say you want to move fast, but then if your behavior is not moving very fast, then you got to kind of calibrate to reality. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do with the group now, to see how fast are you really moving, and then kind of make adjustments to say, okay, well, this is how often we ought to touch base, maybe have a Zoom. If they're not moving that fast, then I'll move slower. And maybe we'll have a Zoom once a month. So I'm kind of touching base with them in the Slack channel and letting them kind of tell me. But I know at least one of the guys he's getting into it, because tonight he was like, I'll come to the poker game if you want me to, but I'm really looking forward to getting into this option stuff. And I was like, dude, do whatever,
He's willing to sacrifice. Yeah.
So I know he's getting into it.
Something hit me on top of the head as you were talking, and I wanted to discuss it with you as a future call, perhaps, or expansion, because over the years, just as you've developed certain gems that you saw, and you say, hey, that really works, and you put it in your pocket. There's another thing you can work with.
Sure.
In my experience, I had a guy that was a lot older than me, and he used to do weekly accountability sessions. And he showed me his method.
Yeah.
And he was sort of a shrink, actually. It was amazing to watch.
Yeah.
This guy taught me a management method that in all my study, all my years, I haven't seen anything better.
Okay.
And so it's a management accountability thing.
Okay.
That's personal based. It's only what I give you as these are my goals and my objectives and what I'm going to do and when. And if you can report on those and hold people accountable in a minimal amount of time each week, it's phenomenal. It's amazing the progress of an organization moving forward toward the goal that they want to achieve and the overall goal, which is to make us super traders. And so,
since you found that very helpful, it sounds very similar to, there's a book called The 4 Disciplines of Execution by Chris McChesney. And I don't know if you've run onto that or not.
Yes.
But having those accountability, because that's kind of what he comes up with big, hairy, audacious goals, BHAGs, gets real clear around those.
Mhm.
And he talks a lot about how do you implement something important in the middle of a whirlwind. And the whirlwind is your day job. All this stuff you got to do, and your organization's asking you not only to do that, but to push this some initiative that's new. And that's largely what they recommend is regularly, weekly, you're asking people for one thing. What's the one thing you're going to do to move this new initiative forward next week? And then the next meeting, you're saying, how did I do against that one thing last week? And what am I going to do next week? And each manager's reporting on that. And and the senior leader can veto kind of what you've come up with because it doesn't fit into the strategic objective, but they're not to give you your one thing. And so that's kind of some ground rules, some rules of engagement.
We implemented that at Very System. They're actually located in Alpharetta, where they could come to our spot for lunch. I don't know, but we implemented that program at Mavericks. And
the 4 disciplines of execution.
Yes.
What's interesting is years ago, I had a phone call with Chris McChesney, and I was extremely hopeful that I would become a part of some of the implementation consultants that would help to bring it, because I was a raving fan of it. Covey I taught the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People from 1987, until probably 2010-ish. Starting at Arco and then throughout all of Johnson & Johnson companies. I was kind of their 7 Habits guy. I met Stephen Covey, himself on a couple of occasions. And that's kind of through that how I met Chris McChesney. I'm not quite sure what happened, but it didn't lead to me doing anything, but it didn't keep me from being a fan of his work.
You know what, the two thoughts come to mind. Well, the most significant benefit that we found at Mavericks from it was the end result of the organization and how the crew gelled like glue after that process.
Okay.
They're still there. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And so that helped out big time. Not to mention, we've retained that #1 restaurant out of 90 people, but it's been valuable. But now imagine, Dale, if you had what you just said, the 7 habits and the 4 disciplines, implemented within Trade Diff on a visual experience that everybody could see where everybody is and all marching toward the goal, keeping yourself accountable I put that out there. They're going to see that I didn't meet my 3 objectives this week.
Right.
And so that kind of accountability would be incredible going through the program, your development plan. If I had that accountability screen to see where I was, if I was on the bottom, I'd work damn hard to get closer to the top.
I'm loving this concept, and I've shared it with my partner, Mike. I don't know if he saw it as much as I do, but I've been heavily influenced by his concept of lead indicators versus lag, lead versus lag. And so I've spent a lot of time thinking about, what are the lead indicators? If lag is kind of your return on investment or your capital, you're expecting, what are those lead measures that'll get you to the lag? And so that's kind of, I'm a big fan of that. And I've been thinking a lot about it. I've tried along the way to say, okay, pick priorities, from a programming perspective that might help us to do that. So I would love, as you get more involved, to think about other things that could help us to better do that.
Well, you're also talking about, not only are you inspiring them all to move forward on their goals and objectives in a combined direction, resulting in, with that accountability, resulting in incredible forward progress, but you're displaying, and you'll see some of this in the journalytics, you're displaying key factors like, well, how much risk did I take that week?
Right.
Or whatever it is, whatever the metrics are that could cause someone to go from, high to low in no time if they
Yeah.
didn't watch those metrics carefully. And it exposes, I guess, us to a performance improvement program that would just be phenomenal if it was automated within that sphere. So,
Here's kind of where I remember my father never talked about financial things. And so I was raised to just kind of expect just everybody just never talks about this stuff. And then I thought, well, how do you really learn about it? If nobody's really talking to you about it and it's this big secret. And so what Mike and I have kind of chosen to do is to have, we probably swung too far in the other direction. I have to be always careful about hiding my account numbers, when I share a YouTube video, because who knows, somebody in an internet cafe somewhere, the world's not as trustworthy as I'd like it to be. But at the same time, we've chosen to share a lot of kind of open things we're doing for the benefit of learning. Now, not everybody is ready for that. So what we're exploring are ways to give you a pseudonym, so that nobody knows except you and whoever you choose to tell of who you really are, as a possible alternative for that, to see if it increases people's comfort. But if you're not comfortable or people aren't comfortable with sharing it, we go, that's okay. Just come on, collaborate, paper trade it. So it's not your real account. But we do have probably 15 to 20 people who've connected real accounts. And we see that the possibility is to come into trade diff, prove that you have what it takes as a trader, develop a following, and then collaboratively let's monetize that following. That's the vision that we have. We've talked to a few what I consider kind of whales in the business that, they travel to all these money shows and they've written books and, they're known in the space. And, we've had favorable reactions from having discussions with those. Do you go on Tasty Trade much? Are you familiar? Do you watch any of their stuff?
yeah, I originally saw Tom in Las Vegas a long, long time ago,
Okay.
and was blown away by his knowledge.
So we've had a Zoom with Tom
Oh,
a couple weeks ago. Dr.
wow.
Jim, we had a Zoom with Dr. Jim.
You realize what you have there. You have something that could be think
And
or swim if you ever wanted to sell.
God,
I mean,
I
it's
love it
unbelievable.
hearing that, because we had Tom on and there was a number of other people on, and I just did kind of a 1 or 2 minute pitch of what we were working on and, hey, we'd like to talk to you more. And he said, yeah, schedule it, so I have that as an option. Dr. Jim is now connecting his account on the site. He's doing it under a
Yeah,
pseudonym because he's not
yeah,
quite sure, how anybody would feel about, so he's not publicizing or doing anything publicly, but he saw it as an opportunity to kind of track his private, how he's doing, and to use our
yeah.
metrics. Because if you don't, and you're keeping an Excel spreadsheet, you're just, I don't know about you. I used to spend 45 minutes to an hour for over a year tracking a particular strangle trade because I was trying to figure out if I want to really do this. Does it really work? My father was having some health issues at the time, and I took my travel trailer and I lived across the street from the hospital, and I'd plug it into an electrical thing, and I'd sit in there, when I wasn't, babysitting my dad, I was, doing my Excel spreadsheets,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
did that whole thing for a year. And had I had trade diff at the time, I could have automated all that to kind of see how you're doing. So what it enables people to do is try a little bet or a little experiment, see how it works. And then you could decide if you want to continue doing it in your portfolio or not.
so yeah,
And
Yeah.
then
I
you
mean,
can learn from other people. You can then learn from other people's mistakes, and what Mike and I occasionally, we have these guys that they're newbies and they're learners. They're like, this is great, pedal to the metal. And we'll look at their stuff and seeing it's like one of my friends was like, you're an uber bullish, a perma bull. And we're like, I'm concerned that if it doesn't continue to go up, you're going to experience a big drawdown. And so Mike and I can kind of look at his portfolio and have Zoom calls with him. So it's kind of, I think this is steroids for do-it-yourselfers.
mm-hmm. I
But
love it.
I,
Absolutely love it.
also think that the status quo financial industry would have most people believe, one, you're too stupid to manage your own money, and it's way too dangerous. Therefore, you got to pay us large amounts in order to do it for you. And I question that. I believe people, it's a learnable skill, and people are smarter than you give them credit for. And there's a whole heck of a lot of people out there that are smart people, and they'd like to take back the reins. I think that demographic, usually it's older, like you and I. If I go to these money shows and I look around, it's people that look like us, but many of them are looking at kind of taking back whatever. Maybe it's 5% they've been paying somebody else to do it, and they're just saying, hey, I'm a do-it-yourselfer in many parts of my life, and I bet I could be a do-it-yourselfer in aspects of this. And so that's kind of who I'd like to work with.
Do you, well, you must, but the potential of what you're working on is ginormous. I mean, it's over the top when you think about it. Number one, you remember Thinkorswim when they I don't know if they merged or they bought or they were bought by or that portion of the training when they got into it with Invest Tools. That was amazing, and that was just a piece of the pie that could have enhanced if they had someone with your skill set in terms of trading and training
and educating.
Yeah. And if you added that component in, and then you added the accountability component in, and then you added what you could do in terms of seeing your analytics, it's like, it's golden what you had there.
Yeah.
And so the core of what you guys are building and could do is huge. It is a Thinkorswim. It's by itself. If you were to sell it to interactive brokers, or not saying you don't have to sell it, you just keep it. But I'm just saying the potential what you have there is unbelievable. So I will look forward to you looking at Journalytics, because that guy's a ways into the futures.
And because I'm assuming Journalytics allows you to kind of capture and keep track and because it's got the word journal in it. Is that a correct assumption? That some of it? Have you seen our snapshots on TradeDiff? All right. Why don't you let me show you something that I think you're going to get a kick out of here. And so I'm going to show you a screen here. Then this is my $1 million portfolio challenge. And there's a group of us that are paper trading, if we were managing $1 million. But what you can do here is once you connect, whether it's a paper trade account or a real account, every day that you visit your portfolio, it creates a snapshot of your entire portfolio at this time. So, I look back on it at September 27th, and I could view that snapshot of at a particular time at 3:30 p.m. on September 27th. This was this paper trading, but you can do the same thing in a real account. So what people can do is they can go in here, if they see something like this Apple trade, you could highlight, some things here, and then you can go up and you can add a question here. You can highlight a trade, like, why'd you select these strikes? Right? And then when I log on, it'll pop up here in a notification. And then I can go in, I can view the exact thing they highlighted. I can leave a comment, and then this becomes shareable. So you just come up here and you copy this, and you could share it on Twitter, or you could share it on Facebook.
Yeah.
So the opportunity for then you to develop a following where people are then, they click on it on Twitter, they come in, they see what you're talking about, and they say, I think this is BS or whatever. They're having a collaborative environment where we're looking at real trades that people are making.
It's
So
a Vulcan mind meld, as Spock would say.
So this is, I don't know if you have they used to call it knowledge management,
Yeah.
your ability to kind of capture knowledge, document it for somebody else. And so, you're beginning to write your own book, so to speak, in terms of the things that you're acquiring. But rather than having to go somewhere else and take notes, you're just taking notes right here, and you can go back in time. So if you were, imagine in 2008 when the market was crashing and you're taking notes about what you're learning and your drawdowns, and if I had to do it differently, here's what I would have done, and all those things, and you could go back and kind of reread your own book. Maybe you could become a better trader. So this is kind of we've got a leaderboard here where for the $1 Million Challenge, you can click on trends, and Mike and I are having a good natured competition here. And you can see, even though we've been running this for a while, mine's worth $1,017,000. We started off with $1 million, and his is $1,015,000. So we're only $2,000 apart. And we started this thing back on September 12th. So here we're 2 weeks into it, and we're only a couple thousand apart. So that's the $1 Million Challenge. Once a month, we're running competitions and contests. The last month, we ran one where you could only sell puts or create spreads. Mm-hmm. And we create kind of the rules. So if you try to do something illegal, it won't let you. Mm-hmm. And what we did is we ran this kind of like a poker tournament where a group of people bought in $50 a piece, and we had like a little competition. We paid first place got 65%, second place got 25%, and third place got 10%, basically their money back. And then we allowed certain people to play for free. If you didn't want to buy in, if that's not your thing, come on in, play for free. You're just not a candidate for the prize pool. Mm-hmm. And so we did that one. This one was a spreads, or only spreads or naked selling. And Mo's just this degenerate gambler, and he figures out a way around the rules in order to, bet it all on black. And we just can't, he's a funny guy and everything, but he's kind of good. I don't know. At first we thought he was running some kind of an angle, and I don't think he is. I think, but here's also another one that we was just calling put buying. And part of what I wanted to show to people is just how hard it is to fade the rake, to fade the theta decay when all you can do is buy calls and puts. And mm-hmm. so many of these guys, that's where they start off. And is it any wonder that 90% of all option traders lose 90% of their account value in the first 90 days? Because they approach it like a casino, and and then it so anyway.
you've probably already thought, Dale, about the monetization of it in terms of like collective 2 or something like that, where it's incredible what you could accomplish with this thing.
Well, what we're thinking is, a person could sign up, for small amounts, and as you then bite off more and more, there's, a concierge level of service, more of one-on-one kind of coaching. There's it in groups. So kind of the first thing it would be, just come in, look at other people's stuff, be a voyeur and collaborate. Then there's kind of connect your account and do that. There's follow like one person, and there's follow unlimited followers. And then there's other things that, my development plan, and periodically touch and base with some coaching, all the way up to a higher level where kind of a concierge one-on-one kind of work. And so it's kind of a grad from small to more, depending upon how much help kind of a person wanted. And
Yeah, and if I'm out there in nowhere land and I want to look at who's trading what strategies and what are they earning on that, and then I want to learn from that, and I click on oh, Dale, he's in the strength, whatever, you know what I mean, and
yeah,
I can follow that, and it suits my personality. It'd be like,
right.
wow.
Well, I think what's going to really speed up people's learning is, you can learn a little. I want to be an aggregator of content that's already out there. And then you can kind of be learning on your own and then spiraling it into trade diff and practicing some things as a paper trader, and then collaborating with a few people who know a little bit more than you do. And you're kind of, it's like a flight simulator where you're practicing. And then when you feel comfortable with the strategy, then you can begin to dabble in it in your real account. So the thing that we're looking at for next, starting not maybe in the next week or two, is having a contest just strangles.
Mm-hmm.
We're focusing on strangles. That's all that you can trade. Now, if you want to skew the strangles, you can, but they're all strangles. Two-sided, sell the put, sell the call. We'll have a little competition, and we may run it for 60 days.
Mm-hmm.
And so just kind of focusing on one strategy. So what I envision is focusing on maybe one strategy at a time. So, and then having some subscription eventually. Everything's free right now because we're pressure testing things, and we appreciate people that are joining us. But at some point when it becomes a subscription-based model, a portion of your monthly subscription will go to contests, prize pools. So that's kind of included.
Cool. That's so much
So
fun.
yeah,
It's a blend.
it's a fantasy football for options traders
Yeah.
that, as a consequence, builds life skills. And I
Yeah.
can see the potential for, parents wanting their kids that are into video games. Like, hey, maybe you'd enjoy playing. It's a game, but you're playing a paper trader, but you're learning a life skill.
Now,
That when you
excuse me, sorry. Will you envelop a training module where they'll kind of click into the development plan and watch and learn? Is that
Well, here's kind of what I've got so far is I'm using Slack, and right now we have 4 people who are committed, and then a few others that are kind of maybes. And you're welcome to join that group. And then periodically, I don't know if you're familiar with Slack. Are you?
no, I want to dig into it tonight. So
Okay, Slack is, and I can even share a screen so you can kind of see what it looks like. Let me pull my Slack on. It's kind of earned the right to have multiple screens set up here, but I know something is good when it's earned the right to have its own screen. And here's kind of my like Slack. And so I've got a group here of Tasty Nation set up, and these are all tasty traders, and we're always chatting about trades we're making. And I've got all kinds of channels here, from 0 DTEs to there's one just for futures, and all this. I have my own group here called Dallas Traders, and where I'm posting stuff in, and here's this option coaching group. So up here, I've tagged kind of pinned some items here that are some recordings and things I want the group to read, and kind of a shared file folder where you can begin to read the stuff. And here's the option development plan. That's my Excel spreadsheet, and that one doesn't look like it populated very well, but this one probably will. And so these are all kind of things that I've shared in the file folder. So you can kind of click on something, and it's got kind of the Excel spreadsheet here for things to do, things to read. And, let me just pull that over here so you can kind of see. And here's essentially it's what's the desired result we're after? What are some things to do, and what are some things to read or videos to watch? And so the group begins to kind of work through it. And each time there's an assignment, then they go on trade diff to complete the assignment. And then what I'll do is on Slack, we can come in and chat about it. And when they're ready, we'll have another Zoom to kind of answer questions. So what I'm hoping to do is to leverage, my time so it's not spent as much spoon feeding people. And so many of the new kind of generation, they like things that are kind of self-paced. Just kind of point me in a direction, give me some links. I mean, I know a guy who taught himself programming and he learned most of it by watching 14-year-olds on YouTube. His wife was like, "Why are you watching all these 14-year-old kids?" He's like, "Because they got time on their hands and they know this stuff."
Wow.
And so I was just trying to kind of tap into a self-paced learner, mainly because, I don't want to be spending my time just spoon feeding a person. I want to kind of point them in the direction, let them answer questions and kind of guide them along the way without having to teach 20 people one at a time what is an option.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they're going to be better because of it.
Hopefully. And it's kind of like, how good do you want to be and how fast do you want to move? And so I'm figuring out for them kind of, in different groups may work differently, but it's not my full-time gig. It's just during market hours, I'm a trader and I'm doing it. And
can you tell me how, just for curiosity, because of my own situation, how good zero DTE trading like Tammy was talking about has been for you?
Well, I will tell you that I started in January actively trading an account out of 180 some odd occurrences. I was having a 72% success rate, and I ran some math numbers projecting that into the future, and assuming I could continue to do that, it would lead to a 30% return.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now it's kind of hard. Like, what do you measure the return on? Do you measure it on buying power? And buying power can be a little misleading, because if you really understand buying power here, it's what the broker holds to manage their risk, but it's not necessarily being used. It's almost like escrow that's being held to manage their risk. So it's not that easy. I would just assumed that a person was trading it on a $100,000 account, was using $80,000 of buying power in my math, and they were trading approximately 10 contracts regularly, 3 times a week. So that's kind of what my numbers were based upon as I did my projections and my math. Now, every now and then I will conduct a little experiment to see kind of how it works. And recently I've chosen on some things not to do the stop losses, but instead to do a rolling strategy. And I did have some in the money calls that I chose to roll. And so now I'm kind of in the middle of that. So the jury's still out on my ability to recover that money. So I know it's kind of, I'm not directly answering your question, and I may choose, I am not going to say that I'm going to stay with the rolling strategy, but it's a little bet, it's a little experiment. I call a little bet. It's not that little bet. But it also, I mean, if there is a bright side, it's giving me, I don't know the degree that you understand beta weighted deltas.
No, not yet.
It's kind
of. I did. It's something I lost, and now I got to regain. So
in essence, it's a way, let's say you have 20 holdings in your portfolio. They're all different. How do you compare and look at the whole? There's apples, there's oranges, there's tomatoes, there's an ink pen. They're all so
Mhm.
different. And so what
Mhm.
beta weighted deltas does is it kind of boils it down to if they were all the SPY,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
if it was 100% invested in SPY, essentially how many shares of SPY would you have?
Interesting. Okay.
So basically, if you took, and this is the way I think about it, I've never heard anybody else explain it this way, but if you take your, and sorry if there's too much math on what I'm about to explain, but if you take your net liquidation value and you divided it by what SPY is currently trading at, that
Mhm.
would give you a number. So
Mhm.
let's assume that number is 1,000. And then you look at your beta weighted deltas for your entire portfolio. If it's 1,000, the way I think about it is you're taking the equivalent market risk of being 100% invested in SPY.
Mhm.
For
Mhm.
every dollar SPY goes up, you could expect to make $1,000. For every
Mhm.
dollar the SPY goes down, you could be expected to lose $1,000.
Mhm.
So it's a way of kind of gauging and thinking about market risk, and then you can begin to play the math what if scenario games to kind of understand what would be the implications if SPY went up 100 points or down 100 points, or based on what your hypothesis is about the market. So long story short, by having those calls in SPX that I've rolled, it's given me some negative beta weighted deltas.
Mhm.
I think I needed a few. I mean, going into the election with some uncertainty and kind of things, I would rather be closer to market neutral. And
Mhm.
that puts me more at a neutral. I was probably more bullish than I wanted to be, and having rolled these. So that's something I'm always looking at for the big picture to kind of say, given the fact that I do this, how's it going to impact the whole, and what's the market risk on the whole, and is that something that I feel comfortable with?
I'm pretty sure this is the Sosanoff did a presentation on this a while ago, and I'm
Mm,
pretty sure this is what he was talking about in essence,
yeah.
and
And
it helps me.
so that's one of the things that's on my development plan is learning about beta weighted deltas. And then there's
Mhm.
links to videos,
Cool,
to help
cool.
with that. And so it's just kind of, how do you eat an elephant? I told my guys, I go, well, first, why would you want to? But if you did, you cut it up into little bites, and one
Yeah,
bite at a time.
yeah, way cool.
So there's other stuff I'm working. At 7 o'clock, I've got a Zoom meeting with Tammy and some guys that are using some new, they're called Pong signals. And we're experimenting with the use of these signals to see if we can improve our win rates on SPX trades.
Mhm.
And so, the stuff, I bought Tammy's lunch the other day, and I told her because she's evolving in her own thinking, and I was reminded of something somebody told me one time is, you learn about all these theories when you're going to college, and I don't know, Maslow was one of them, right? And before he
Mhm.
died, somebody asked him, and I think he essentially, his response was he wasn't even sure if he still believed the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. He had evolved past so much, but yet it's like the only thing he was known for, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So everybody that's known Tammy, has, she always uses stops. So she just when she convinced you the importance of using stops, now she's like, rolling, right? So she's moved on.
So you guys are really growing. This whole thing is amazing. Yeah.
So we've got our group, and so that's what the next thing I've got going at 7 o'clock tonight prior to my poker game. So from 7 to 8, we're going to be talking about Pong signals. And
She
then,
mentioned that she was working on some software, and that was
yeah,
interesting. Yeah. Wow.
right.
I don't know how you have it. It's like, whew, you got a lot going on.
Well, not too much. I, like yourself, I'm trying to get in better shape. I mean, I went back for my physical, and the doctor said, "You do know that you've gained some weight, right?" Well, I not that okay, maybe, I guess I have. So I rolled out a little yoga mat here, and throughout the trading day, I've been kind of doing a
Yeah.
little exercise, just trying to be a little more active.
Good for you, Dale. Good for you. Gosh, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me, and I could learn. And I look forward to joining whatever I can
Yeah,
to increase what I'm learning and what I want to do.
sure.
Man,
Well, sounds great. And, I'll go ahead and stop the recording here, and then